welcome to another edition of Reptile Fight Club. I'm Justin, and with me is Chuck. What is going on, Chuck?
Hello, man.
How's life? Things good?
The new year is starting off with the new year. Yeah. Things are fine. Yeah, work is kind of ridiculous right now. I'm back in that whole, work being too much, too extra.
No, that's always fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Right.
Pays your bills.
Yeah, for sure. We've got a guest today, so that's about time we had a guest, right?
It is.
I guess with all the holidays and stuff, it's kind of hard to schedule, and we've been we got a few good folks lined up, so we're happy to have Noah Richardson on with us today. So it'll be fun to have Noah on, and I mean he's here now, so
yes, he's on. He's literally on right now.
He's on. Yeah, so.
No, that's your cue, man. Come on.
I'm going. There was panic as soon as you guys hit record. My headphones stopped working and I couldn't hear anything.
Oh shoot! You gotta love that. I mean, it wouldn't be a podcast without some kind of.
We do that. We actually, Justin has a button that he hits, and he can just
disrupt
disconnect people's things that
That'd be helpful.
You just gotta have a little fear, a little bit of fear to get your to get your heart racing.
Yeah. That's what we like. Yeah. We like just a touch of blood in the water before. Yeah.
You got to initiate that fight or flight, mechanism.
That's correct. That's correct.
Hey, nothing like a fight club if it wasn't, if it wasn't for a little adrenaline.
Yeah, we like a little fright club with our fight club. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Yeah. Welcome.
Yeah. Things over here are going good. It's nice and cold. It's been snowing a lot, so it's back to the frigid temperatures. I've got a bunch of snakes to ship out and a couple that need to come to me, so I'm hoping it will warm up soon, but yeah, we'll see. Hopefully it helps the breeding as well. We've going to get a few things a little cooler this year, see if that helps stimulate things, but I don't know. I guess you see when you see. I think my blackhead is ovulated, though. I think she's got eggs or something, but we'll see if that happens. I mean, she's huge. She's like, just giant. And so hopefully that's a good sign of good things to come. Get another chance to do it right, huh? So yeah, I've seen a few other locks. I tried a first-time breeder Eastern Stimson's that's phenomenal looking. So, and I've seen her locked up with the male a few times. A couple other. Some inlands were locked up, so that's nice. Things are about as good as they can be at this time of year. The short days and cold temperatures.
Just throw the window open and let the snow in.
Yeah, I've kept the door open a few times, like kind of push through some cold air to kind of get it, get some stimuli going. But we'll see how it goes.
Take a cue from Terry Phillip and throw some snow in the enclosures.
There you go.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be hard.
Yeah. So, we've been getting the snow of the liquid variety here. So,
you guys are inundated with
lots of rain. Yeah.
Is it across the state? I mean, is it clear up by you, Noah, or like you guys?
No, it's been
just down south.
So I was going to ask if how was it down south in San Diego area?
So we had, last week we had quite a number of days where it was just like raining every day. We had one day where it literally rained for 24 hours. Pretty hard, normal for anywhere else, hard for San Diego, right? And some of it was pretty pretty downpourish, which gets really sketchy down here just because, civil engineers didn't make highways that drain properly. And when our soils get wet, our slopes start sliding off and, bad stuff starts happening. So that was, definitely heard a lot of that in Central California. I know I talked to Steve, and he said he had a lot of got a lot of water up there, and it was pretty crazy. So it wasn't too bad here. Some flooding, some traffic debauchery stuff, but we managed. So we made it.
What's California without traffic? I mean,
I know, right? Like, I'm
got to
like,
make it worse with something. Yeah, I don't
just
think
another day in the life.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
It seems like you've got a pretty good schedule, though. You kind of go in early and come home, so you're not hitting rush hour necessarily.
So
that's good.
I do definitely leave like a little bit before any type of rush hour hits, which is good. But very weirdly, it seems that whenever I go to get in my car to either go to work or leave to work, that's when the rain wants to start. So I'm always seems to be driving in the rain, even if I'm not driving in peak traffic. So I guess, take it where you can get it. But still got to watch out for those people who never check their tires, and then when it rains, find out that they're well overdue for a tire change.
They
go sliding by you.
Those outdoor pythons surviving the rain. Okay, they're
doing good. They're. I mean, like when it was raining and cold, and I was in my house with my heater on. They're out, sitting on the basking shelf, like. Out and about. So I know we had kind of had that conversation about how, diamond pythons like to go out for adventures in the rain. And that seems to be the case, man. Yeah.
You're seeing that too. Huh?
That's definitely. And both of them, not just the diamonds, but also the coastals were, once that cool weather hits and the storm front's there, they're out and about. So. It's pretty interesting to watch. But
that is cool.
All the outdoor stuff's just doing good.
Nice. Yeah, I'm. I wish I could do that here. I'm kind of jealous of your climate down there, but it'd be nice to keep them out year round.
That's why I stay here, to make people jealous.
I'm jealous of that. I'm not jealous of the traffic.
There's so many things not to be jealous about. So I got to stick to where I can get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be cool to keep stuff outdoors. I probably ought to set something up so I can keep them out at least partially, part of the year. And I'm really trying to make a big push to get some better caging and those kind of things. I think that darn Project Herpeticulture, every time I listen to it, you're hearing about how we need to improve our herpeticulture, and I tend to agree with that. I think that's a good thing. The Podfather pushes that a lot too. So.
Sure. I mean, and that's like, I feel like that's such an endless, bottomless pit that you could sink money into improving improving your husbandry and keeping. So,
well, that's the other thing Eric's been pushing kind of is that you can't turn the ship on a dime. You got no, especially if you start out with that kind of, pyramid scheme mentality of I got to keep as many snakes in as small a space as I can, and the going through that whole thing and trying to change.
If you listen to guys like Ron St. Pierre, who will sit there and tell you like, hey, I'm always trying to improve my care, and I've gone through thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just ripping stuff apart and redoing it till I get it as good as I think it can get. So I mean. There's no end to it.
Ron changing his caging up.
Iterations, money,
I know how that goes.
Endless hole, bettering yourself, and your animals.
Yeah, but kind of over time, not necessarily. You don't have to change it all overnight. Improve as you can, improve as you go. That's about all you can do. So, yep. Well, you guys ready to fight? Okay.
Cue the fight.
Well, let's go. Bring the heat.
Let's get ready to rumble.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, Noah. Let's have you introduce yourself a little bit. Where you fit in herpeticulture, that kind of thing.
Well, I had a very unique background. As a kid, I grew up loving dinosaurs, and it just went downhill from there.
Doesn't sound familiar at all. You're a weirdo. What a weirdo.
That's so coincidental.
No, it was actually fun. I grew up slightly different. It wasn't dinosaurs; it was dragons for me. That was my kind of transition into reptiles. But it was so my dad was kind of like an old school timer, if you will. Mm-hmm. He used to be like a real big keeper before keeping was kind of like popular. Mm-hmm. So he used to have he was telling me he used to have like 30 different chameleons. He smuggled an iguana into his house when he wasn't supposed to. So my grandmother still tells me stories about that one. He's had all sorts of geckos and whatnot. So I kind of grew up in the exotic trade. He built this massive enclosure for this Panther Chameleon that we used to have. And it was like foam background. It had like a waterfall misting system. It was super cool.
That's cool.
It was like an old gutted, massive, like 400-gallon fish tank that he turned into like a screen door with lighting, and it was really fun. We used to have a bearded dragons in our coffee table with lighting and UVB. So I mean, I kind of just grew up in the pet trade from him, and my mom was kind of supportive in that sense too. She was more of a fan of lizards than snakes. So for me, that was definitely I definitely keep more snakes than lizards right now. So growing up, I was like, "Can I get a snake?" And she's like, "They don't have legs, so no." I was like, "Oh, can I please?" And we used to have stuff get out all the time. I used to, being in the desert, my dad used to work for AME, aerospace company, and so we used to be out in Victorville, and it was always super fun because every now and then when he'd be driving home, he'd find baby Cali Kings that he'd scoop up and put in like a deli cup, bring home to show us, and then the next day he'd go and release them back in the spot he found them.
It's cool.
Yeah, so it was really fun. Never brought home any venomous, unfortunately, but it was
to show you. Huh?
No, I didn't get to go to none of the venomous.
Was he into herping at all? Did you go out herping with him, or was it pretty much just keeping?
Herping. Yeah, just keeping. I mean, whenever we kind of lived in like in Victorville, like when we kind of lived there back in like 2005, it was like a newly developed city. Like we were like the first homeowners, like our entire resident was like the brand new homes. So, I mean, if you traveled like a mile outside of my house, it was like all just rest of like the desert. So it was kind of easy to just go out, just play around on like our BMX bikes and like naturally find, fence lizards or like scorpions were kind of a common thing over there. And
early colonialists to the Victorville.
Exactly. Yeah. We were one of the first victims of Victimville.
Victimville. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be maybe some good spots for herping at least.
Yeah.
I've never really herped in Victorville or that area, but I mean you're pretty close to some good stuff.
I don't know, it's got Cal Kings.
It does have Cal Kings. But I mean you could also come to San Luis Obispo where we're getting Cal Kings right now and it's still 60 degrees.
Fair.
Yeah, it's nice. Yeah. It's a lot nicer.
That's cool.
Justin just has not had as good a luck with Cal Kings.
Sounds like this is the year, though.
This is why he's open to Victorville, because he hasn't found them anywhere else in California, really.
No, come up here, man. I find more Cali Kings than gopher snakes. And when Travis Johnson used to live out here, we used to go herping together. And it was funny because he always found the gopher snakes and could never find Calis. So we were finally like the perfect match.
That's cool. So, do you do a lot of herping up there then, or
I try to
nowadays?
Yeah, I definitely try to. Living next to Montana de Oro, it's super easy to find like Norpacks here. Yeah, you can go and trip on a stick and find them by accident. Like my 2-year-old son kind of did the same thing. Well, he's fine. He didn't get bit, but he's scared off a snake. And my wife was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was a Norpack." But it's really easy to find like rattlesnakes up here, especially. You just go to like this one plot of like a protected land, and it's literally known. Like we have a trail called Rattlesnake Trail.
Yeah,
they're really easy to find. It's kind of finding like the Cali Kings and some of the other like smaller, not as common species to find. Like we have the California newts up here. There's spots behind the lake I live to where it's super easy to find them in like the dozens.
Yeah.
The problem is just getting your vehicle to that spot.
Mm-hmm.
But no, they're really fun to find. They'll like hang out in like gopher holes, so like, they'll just be peeking out and just kind of watching you from like head height level holes.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of cool nature out here.
Nice.
That I've been really trying to like get out and find more stuff ever since like NPR have really been kind of hitting the head with quit keeping as much and go out and find all the stuff in your backyard. So I've really been trying to make it a goal to go find like a lot of the stuff in my backyard.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah,
that's the way to do it. I think. Hopefully, other people are taking that. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially if you stick close to home.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I've never really done much in that area. I've had a couple conferences and things up in like San Francisco, and had an uncle up in San Jose, but yeah, haven't done much in kind of the more central area. We need to go visit Steve as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good excuse to get up and maybe hit San Luis Obispo while we're at it. Yeah.
Which Steve?
Steve Sharp.
Steve Sharp?
He's the one that's in.
Okay.
In Fresno, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, got it. Okay.
The Chaffee. What's it? Chaffee or
Fresno Chaffee?
Fresno Chaffee Zoo. Yeah. Well, cool. Well, thanks for coming on, and we're looking forward to fighting. So, yeah. You recommended the topic, so we'll talk about hands-on versus hands-off keeping. Like, should you handle your stuff? Should you kind of keep a distance a little more, and kind of some of the, I guess, ideas behind that. So, well, let's go ahead and do a coin toss. So, let's see. Chuck and I will go first to see who gets to duel with you here. So,
I could
go ahead and
tails.
Chuck, got tails.
Nice.
What do you want?
So I have pretty strong opinions about all this. So I am going to abstain and let Justin fight this one.
I thought you were going the other way with that one.
No,
okay.
I'm a man of misdirection, wild misdirection.
That's for sure. That's what you're the wild card.
That's right.
All right. Okay. Well, go ahead and call the next one, Noah. And
I'm gonna guess heads.
Heads. It's heads, man. I'm losing every flip here.
Oh man.
What side do you fight?
I will hands off. Hands off approach.
Hands off. Okay, I'll go with hands on.
Alrighty.
All right, and where you're the coin toss winner, you get to decide who goes first.
I'm gonna go first.
Oh, whoa, the anti-shot.
I'm gonna make the bottom totem pole of the keeper world. I'm gonna go first.
There you go. All right.
So I guess, definitely kind of growing up and seeing species in the wild, and especially seeing exotic stuff in zoos, just kind of having that mystery, seeing something in like a well-done enclosure. Doesn't necessarily have to be like, bioactive and super crazy, but just seeing an animal in its, something that you can kind of do the best you can, and just kind of seeing it in its, natural, or quote, state. It was always like mystic to me, just watching them, even though they don't like do anything. Like, they'll just kind of not move, and just kind of watching them. Like, I used to watch, at like the zoos, I would just stand like 20, 30 minutes just staring into that enclosure, just like mystified by this animal. And if it moved its head slightly, I'd be like, oh my gosh, it just moved.
Yeah.
And so I think by kind of handling, unless it's for somewhat like routine maintenance, like just doing like a quality check, or just to check like the body composition and make sure like your animal's like overall welfare and health is doing good. I think by introducing unnatural responses or like unnatural behaviors by kind of like interacting with them more than need be can kind of create like an unnatural response or like stress from your animal. That's kind of like taking away from its ability to kind of create that natural stasis that they kind of stay in.
Yeah. No, I'd go along with that. I'm sure that anytime you interrupt an animal in its natural environment, you're creating some stress or you're altering their behavior in some way. And like you said, when you've got something in captivity, you want to see it, displaying natural behaviors, not like having, just kind of hiding out or something because you mess with it too much. But I think when we're keeping things in I want to also bring up similar experience, sitting at the zoo. I remember I was at the zoo in Berlin, and they had this enclosure with it seems like there were like 10 or 15 frilled lizards in this huge room. And they kept running back and forth and climbing trees and then climbing down. And, they run on their back legs all goofy. And I just sat and stared at that. They had to pry me away from that exhibit,
Oh, yeah.
So it was, I agree. I love watching things, perform their, kind of natural thing. Now, when we get it in captivity, however, I think, we do have to handle the animals to some extent, and like you said, if we need to change their cage or if we're doing those kind of things, and so I think there could be a benefit to handling regularly, so they know this is not a danger to me. They get used to you, and so that stress level, it might be high at first, but over time that will decline, and they'll be used to the handling. They'll know that okay, when the big monkey comes in, I'm not getting hurt, and so it's not a big deal, and so they settle down. I remember my cousin got a veiled chameleon for their kid, and he was fairly young, maybe 12 years old or something, and I was thinking, oh boy, this is a terrible pet, and he'd post pictures of him holding it and stuff, and handling the animal, and I was just thinking, man, this thing's gonna die real quick. And the thing lived for 6 or 7 years, and it was cool. It would take a really long lifespan.
Yeah, chameleons do not have a long lifespan, so that's actually pretty impressive.
And so they'd feed it and would take food off their fingers and stuff. I mean, it was a male, so they didn't have the complications of having to breed it and things like that. So, I mean, obviously females get egg bound pretty easily, but yeah, he had a pretty good life. They just kind of let him cruise around the living room, on their plants and stuff. And I mean, I was surprised and very wrong about that animal, so, I mean, maybe that's the exception to the rule, and that could very well be, of course that could go the other way very easily too. But, sometimes that's how we interact with our animals. We handle them, so that could be a reasonable thing. So I'd probably start out with that point.
No, I can definitely agree. Kind of growing up with Panther Chameleons, they were definitely one of those animals you either chose to acknowledge that this is going to be a hands-free pet, and you're just going to let them enjoy their life and try to not disturb them as much as humanly possible, because their attitudes are horrific if there's not that kind of bond or relationship with them. Our rule was we either handle them 2 to 3 times a week, nothing super stressful, but just enough, because they are very active, intelligent creatures, and they're really cool to watch. And ours definitely never kind of wanted to go back into the cage. They always, even though we had plenty of room and it was an amazing enclosure and whatnot. But yeah, as soon as we kind of started school and my dad got deployed a couple times, we got kind of lazy with our routine handling. And oh man, its attitude definitely changed for not the better.
Yeah.
So I would definitely say I went to a more natural flight or flight response.
Wild state, yeah.
Yeah. But I do definitely think there are kind of, like what you were saying, there are definitely exceptions to some animals. I do think some animals, it would probably be wise to kind of build that trust and relationship. That way it knows, when the food monkey is coming to, change the paper or change the water bowl, it's not danger. It's just something I'm not uncomfortable with.
Yeah.
But I think there's definitely a bit of a potential swinging too far to the other way with handling. Per se, taking your animal rather than just doing real quick maintenance, or taking it even outside. Because I mean, I handle my animals. I take them outside in my backyard to get some natural sunlight. I definitely think that's beneficial.
Are they in a stroller or?
No, unfortunately, I don't have a stroller for my animals. And now that you say that, I'll start cruising Facebook Marketplace for one.
There you go.
I think that's
there you go.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that the Podfather is really pushing animal care and kind of upping your husbandry. So if you can search Craigslist or maybe Facebook Market secondhand and pick up a stroller for your reptiles, that's
dude, you got to take your snakes on walks, man. I don't know why people are doing this more often.
Yeah, you really, it's the best.
People know you're cool if you're not walking around the neighborhood with your snake around your neck,
Yeah.
It's a very disarming way to
biggest
present your
snake.
reptile to the public too. They
It
come
is.
over, they're like, "Oh, look at the baby," and it's not a baby.
I'm the snake guy at my work. I think we're all that guy at work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you're at the pond with your stroller, you're that guy, but you're surprised.
Oh
Most
yeah.
people are not ready for what they
No, man.
when
That's how I
they throw the bonnet back.
Sorry. I couldn't resist derailing with that
Yeah.
little joke there.
I'm done.
Okay.
But-
Go ahead.
No, but to Chuck's point, I do think people kind of mistake care or general care by handling the reptile or handling your snake or your lizard or whatever versus doing better to improve your cage quality or how you're even running your cage. I'm a big fanatic for, like, right now I'm working on a personal project for kind of actually automating all my stuff. I was listening to Animals at Home podcast, which is something that you brought up, and I didn't know he had a podcast, so I looked into that, and I think he has a lot of really cool guests, and I've only listened to like an episode or two. But one of his guests was it was like Herp HQ. He was showing off this product that he wanted to make for his enclosures, to where it had 3 different LED strips that were of like various Kelvin. It was like a 2,500, a 4,000, and a 6,000. And he programmed it using these tiny little computers to essentially mimic a true daylight cycle, not just a dim on and dim off, or even like what I do to my poor tokay gecko, which is I just turn the light on at 6 a.m. and it blinds it. But it was really cool, and it got me really inspired because I work in engineering, and I have a lot of engineering nerd friends who are way smarter than me. So I told him I wanted to essentially kind of create a true kind of autonomous, like reptile environmental control system, and they're really not hard to do, which is also kind of like a bummer, because I think sometimes in like the reptile world we're kind of stagnant. Like everything works fine now, so no need to change. But I've looked at some of the other people that keep, especially some of like the all-time kind of herp legends that I consider, even I consider you guys herp legends, but like Keith and Ari and some of the other people that just have like phenomenal setups. And I think that's kind of where I hope we kind of start going, not necessarily just hands off because you shouldn't handle your snakes, but more geared towards improving your husbandry, like beyond, abilities. So that way when you need to handle, it's, you can snap your quick Instagram photo, you can still enjoy your animal, you can still have that smile ear to ear every single herper has when they hold that dream species of theirs. Everyone has it. The first time I held a scrub python, I was smiling ear to ear bigger than when, my wedding photos. But I think just, kind of gearing towards handling less and husbandry more is I think where we need to start kind of heading towards. Doesn't necessarily mean, massive bioactive enclosures and stuff like that, but just better than what we are now.
Yeah. I think that reminds me of, I was listening to Project Herpetoculture with the Ipers. They were on that show, and that's part of that network, anyway, they were talking about automation and how it actually disconnects you from your animals, and I was thinking, I don't know, I get it. They were talking about how all the little routine things like, filling the water bowls and turning the lights on and off, it gets you more connected with what the animals are doing. Now, I could see that if that's your full-time gig, if that's all you're doing is taking care of animals all day. But where you have limited time, maybe spending, an hour turning on all the cage lights, probably isn't the best use of time. You got to get to work or whatever. So, I like the idea of automation, and, I think, that, that definitely can improve, meeting the animal's needs in a lot of ways, like you said, when you incorporate these cool technologies and stuff. I guess the downside is if that fails, it might take a little while to realize, what's going on, if your lights are coming on earlier or later or something, if you're not out there as much. But so I guess that's, maybe more of a difference between a hobbyist and a full-time breeder or something. But, I do like the idea of automation. And, I think there may be something to that. I remember there was I think it was that Viper Keeper guy that has all the venomous stuff, and he's always like, it's always sketchy, you know, his videos and stuff. He has a lot of close calls or like
entertaining. The word is entertaining.
There you
we
go.
We need to manage our terminology. We just had a show about this.
This is an Animal Con, Chuck. Come on.
Yeah. So. Well, you know what?
Got to get those clips. Get those clips.
If we're gonna influence, we need to influence the right way. Please manage your language.
Yeah, right.
Positive language. If we just say the right words, everything will be okay.
So, you know, I think that, you know, when you do take that time to interact with the animals and you're like this guy would water his animals with like a spray bottle. So, you know, so every animal that wanted a drink kind of had to come to him to some, you know, to some extent. That was kind of the idea. So then that helps the animal see you as a provider of water rather than a stressor. And so, you know, I can see maybe something along those lines. And like with lizards and things, you know, feeding them by hand or with the forceps kind of helps them settle down. And that's another way to interact. And I think lizards are great for that. Snakes, you know, snakes spend a lot of time not moving, not doing a lot. And so I think a lot of this depends on what kind of animals you're keeping and the level of interaction you want. Like you said, you know, if you have maybe a dangerous animal, a crop monitor or something, you don't want that thing stressed or seeing you as a threat. You want it to understand that you're not a threat. And so I see a lot of people that are getting those large monitors, kind of acclimating them young so they see the keeper as friend, not foe, and so they don't get stressed and they don't get angry or you know, dangerous. So I
can we use the word boisterous? We're not using dangerous. Language matters. Words matter, Justin. Words matter. Sorry.
Right. Yeah, we don't want to offend anybody.
That's right.
Hashtag boisterous. Here we go.
Boisterous.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yes,
those animals aren't dangerous. They're boisterous. But you know, like that. A big croc monitor could do some damage, and then it could damage the hobby. I think I saw Scott Piper brought this up on one of the chats about somebody in Malaysia that got bit by a puff adder that they had, and actually got bit on both hands, and there was no anti-venom. They didn't have anti-venom. The country didn't have any anti-venom, so. Kind of sketchy there. So
did it bite me? I don't know. Let me see. Ow! It got my other hand. How did it get both hands?
He got bit, and then he tried to whack this. Don't bite me. Yeah.
How dare you? Let me take care of this. Ow! It got me again.
What happened? I just did this, and he bit me. Oh crap! There he goes again. So, you know, if you are working, you know, handling your animals regularly, you're acclimating them to you, you know, that could reduce the potential danger that you might have from a large, varanid or crocodilian or, you know, anything that could potentially damage you. So, I mean, that can, I was listening to NPR with, Tom Crutchfield and, you know, hearing, you know, he's got some interesting ideas and you know, I'm not sure about that, but you know,
I would love to get a pair of Jamaicans from him.
Yeah. And he's got some amazing animals, and he's done some really cool, you know, things for some of those, you know, especially like the Caribbean boas and stuff. But anyway, you know, that the idea that these animals, you know, they can learn, they can develop those. I don't know if I'd call it a relationship, but at least like, you know who the keeper is. I think some of my snakes have recognition of me, and they kind of hide out maybe if somebody else comes in the room, and you know, I could be misreading those behaviors, but and you know, I guess if you are handling, like you said, that there can be that danger of anthropomorphizing and saying, oh, my beardy loves it when I cuddle him, you know, and hold him on my lap. Yeah, my snake loves to crawl around on my lap, you know, while I'm watching the football game or something. And maybe they do, but I would probably guess they don't. You know, we're reading into that the wrong way, you know. So
no behavior doesn't necessarily mean good behavior.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, from that aspect, handling can potentially reduce the danger of a large, potentially dangerous animal.
Yeah. Well,
that's my next.
To your credit, I think to name drop like two people in particular, I've definitely kind of like followed from afar, like on Instagram and whatnot, who I think are kind of the epitome of like a great way to handle would be like Lori Torini and even like Justin Smith with his Ackies, his training with them.
Mm-hmm.
He's like from his videos, and I listen to THP, and I absolutely love all their podcasts too.
Yeah.
But how he's very.
This is an NPR network. Come on, man.
No, I'm sorry. Don't
be pushing those jokers.
No,
just kidding.
No, like how he approaches. Are they Ackies?
Yeah, I think Justin is Ackies. Uh-huh.
Yeah, how he kind of trains his Ackies to like not be afraid of him when he comes in. It's not some scary big monster. But, he kind of trains them to slowly, progressively go up his shoulder, and you can kind of see him think. And I think that is, there is good in training, and there is good in kind of knowledge for them to, have that understanding. Like, yeah, the big monkey is not a danger. It's not a threat. Because I don't think that's also good, for the animal's life for its entire lifespan to be thinking, oh my gosh, this, the food monkey is dangerous, to kind of have that looming every single time, especially if you're in your snake room, or if you have them like on a display in your living room. If they are always seeing movement, always seeing a larger, or people just walking by and always kind of living in that constant fear, I also don't think that's a good thing. And Lori's had some really cool stuff. Listening to that NPR episode when she was on a while ago, how she was able to train that carpet python that was just absolutely terrified of her. How she was able to slowly kind of introduce smaller little stepping stones so that it was comfortable to go out and explore. Because I do think enrichment is definitely a thing. Obviously, you can see when a snake is thinking. I haven't worked with a lot of lizards, so I only keep snakes and a tokay gecko. So that's kind of like the background I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's just tokay. They're all the same.
Yeah.
So I definitely think those two are kind of like amazing examples of kind of, doing stuff like that. And there's loads of other people too. For me, probably the most inspirational person that from listening to NPR that I kind of have wanted to have my keeping steer more towards would be Lawrence Ketchington. Mm-hmm. I think he was a phenomenal keeper, and unfortunately, I don't know what happened to him. He kind of went AWOL from like all social media, and I never really kind of figured out what happened. He just kind of stopped existing and updating any of his like social media, and I tried reaching out to him just to text, because when I heard his interviews, I thought he was a phenomenal keeper, and one of his big things was minimalistic handling and just extreme focus on husbandry and doing what he saw by being extremely attentive to his animals from afar. Mm-hmm. That he was able to have such success with all of his animals. I mean, scrubs were the first things he's bred. I love scrub pythons. I think they're one of the most beautiful, unique, cool-looking species. And I wish the prices would go down because I want more. But I think just, like I said, it doesn't have to be some crazy. I mean, he had some amazing enclosures, but he also was attentive to all of his animals enough to know that some of them were not thriving in those natural bioactive, beautiful enclosures. What they needed were very simple hubs. And that's when he saw a vast improvement to their health and their behavior and their stress levels, and that's when he was able to see them return to normal things. Mm-hmm. So I don't like what you were kind of saying about like autonomous keeping. I don't think autonomous keeping is necessarily the goal to not have to do anything. Mm-hmm. I think it's the goal to focus your attention more on other critical things like behavior, like kind of watching them without disturbing them. Going back to the zoo, to be able to just kind of sit there and watch relatively natural, snake in a box type behavior versus, unintentional stress from routine handling.
Yeah.
Not to sound like a bird.
No, I mean, I thought of another thing, in that same regard, like, there's a park in Ipswich that we like to go to when we're visiting Troy Kuligowski, and it's the Queen's Park there, and they have a huge population of Australian water dragons that basically live in the park, mm-hmm. and they snag food off of people and stuff. Like they're pretty acclimated to people, and so we were sitting there having a picnic, and there were probably like 8 or 10 of them just kind of near us. They definitely had their comfort zone, and you couldn't get too close to them. I remember Chris Cupper caught one, like he did this flying dive and grabbed it, so we got to hold this water dragon. And then when I was there in 2016, we were walking along the edge, and I looked down in the water, and there's this huge male Australian water dragon just sitting there on the bottom of the pond, maybe 2 feet down. And so I just reached in and picked him up, and I'm like, that's the easy way to do it, because they thought he was safe, or he could see underwater, so he wasn't trying to swim away or anything. But certain reptiles can get acclimated to people, but they still have their comfort zone, but you can, if we were feeding them, they'd come real close to get some food. You could kind of lure them in closer and closer, and so they'd get acclimated to your presence. But I think they remember as well. So if somebody tries to dive on one and grab it, they're going to remember, okay, I'm not going to trust people for a little while. They probably are going to alter their behavior a little bit compared to what they had before. So I don't know. I always dreamed of having like a walk-in reptile room where, it was like made up like the desert and had a bunch of different species or something, and I could just sit in there and just watch them. I think
visitors are like standing on the floor too.
No, a room. I don't know. They have. They're at Reptile Gardens in South Dakota. They have part of their desert dome that has has natural, you just go in there and there's lizards running around and snakes on the wall and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
There's a place in Europe that has something very similar to that. I can't remember what it's called, but I was talking to one of my friends, Jakob, Northern Reptiles, and he posted on a story of like an exhibit just like that, where it's kind of like an aviary, but like on the ground there were dart frogs running around everywhere.
Yeah.
And there were like legit snakes, or it was either snakes or lizards, just like climbing about in this massive walking environment. It was a really
I think I've seen that. Yeah, it's in
I don't
Sweden
know, I
or
can't remember
something.
what it was. Yeah, I think it was in Sweden. I can't remember what it was called, but it was amazing, and I would have loved to go there.
Yeah, another really great thing is the zoo in Omaha, Nebraska, the Henry Dorley Zoo. That's got a desert dome that's got like, actual sand dunes and like stuff just running around.
Oh, man.
It's really cool, birds and everything. And then there's all sorts of stuff. And then you go inside like a big rock, like a rock wall or whatever. Inside that there's enclosures, with all their stuff. And like you go through the first part is like Africa, and then you go into Australia, and then you go into North America, and it has, the representative species from the different areas. But that's one of the coolest zoos I've been to. And they have like a jungle dome not too far away either, where they have like pygmy hippopotamus swimming around and like birds in the trees and sloths and stuff. It's really cool. I mean, it makes you feel like you're out in nature, and that's kind of, what we want. Hopefully one of the reasons why we keep these things is to enjoy seeing reptiles do naturalistic things. Now, I get it when you're handling too much, that probably interrupts that behavior to some extent. But at the same time, if you're acclimating them to you and they see you as not a threat, then they're going to be more likely to perform their naturalistic behaviors in your presence if they're not afraid of you. Some species are really shy. Like I don't like to handle my spiny-tailed skinks, my Egernia. They get really stressed out or really flighty. So, even when you just walk in the room, they'll duck for cover a lot of times. But I've heard of people that have kind of acclimated theirs, and they're not quite so flighty as they, see as a bringer of food rather than a threat. So, I guess again, it depends on the species. You shouldn't be handling your dart frogs routinely, because you're probably mess them up pretty good. So, but other things, like different pythons or, handling them here and there is probably not it'll probably be a benefit in the long run as they acclimate to you. So.
Yeah, and I definitely think it's kind of species dependent, because I have a common boa, and he's the easiest. I can go months without handling him and, open the cage and pull him out, and it's super easy. But I definitely think there's like a level of degree of like some animals that you just can't really have that kind of relationship, because I don't think they have that kind of stress tolerance if from visually seeing. Because I had a northern white lip that is currently loose in my house somewhere.
Oh no.
And
That's not good.
That was a story and a half. So he went full Houdini on me. I got her last year about the same time, actually almost a year ago, or exactly a year ago. And I got a pair of them. They were both not doing very good. They were in the care of someone that didn't know how to take care of them, essentially. Mm-hmm. And I essentially got the two of them. And the male was like 5 feet. The female was like 4 feet long. So they were definitely adult imports from something. Yeah. And the male died within like a week. And so that was a huge bummer because that was like my dream species. Like owning these things were like I've seen my friend Christopher NG. Huge shout out to him. I've learned so much from him, and he's an amazing friend of mine. But he's the one that you see with the most copyrighted northern white-lip photos. It's like the one where it's like the hand up and it's the shiny one in front of the garage. That's his photo, and so that's the same one everyone's seen. And he's an amazing friend of mine, and so that was so much fun to have this one. And so when the male died, I was super bummed, and so I had the female for a long time. But she was an animal to where when she was left alone, she did amazing. I was able to get like full sheds from her. She ate frozen thawed. Like she was able to adapt really quickly and was able to kind of I would kind of say like display normal behaviors, if you will, mm-hmm. because I didn't realize that they were like northern white lips were huge into digging. Mm-hmm. I walked into my room one night, all the lights were off, and no one just did anything. And I just heard this noise. I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" So I hit her with a red flashlight, and she was just like dolphin diving, just cruising, like burying herself underneath the dirt. And I've never heard of anyone talking about them being that. Going under like dirt like that. And then she also had this EVC little stand that was mounted to the ceiling. And I remember another night I walked in, she like freshly shed. It was a complete shed. And then she was curled up like a GTP. And I was like, wow, that's so cool. I've never heard of these things doing this before.
Yeah.
So, but she was one of those animals to where if I walked into the room during daylight, she was so observant, instantly disappear. Mm-hmm. She would hide. She would instantly notice me, and she would go underneath her hide box, and that was that. Like, I only ever pulled her out when she shed, and that was just to make sure that she didn't have any stuck on her tail tip or whatever, mm-hmm. and to do monthly cleaning of her enclosure. But she was one of those animals. I couldn't do that. Same thing with I have a southern scrub, and she's about 2 years old now, and she's another one I can't pull her out without her spraying and whipping, mm-hmm. From the front end. Yeah. She's very defensive. Or, she doesn't bite or anything like that, but oh man, am I in for a treat with the fluids if I'm not fast enough to kind of get her into a different area for her to kind of calm down so I can clean her cage. Yeah. So I definitely think there's like a varying degree of, I don't want to say snake intelligence, but almost like snake stress
snake tolerance. Yeah.
Tolerance. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree there because some and I think too understanding their natural behavior, like you said, if an animal is kept outside of its preferred parameters, then that could influence its attitude towards the food monkey keeping it in a box that's not right for it, that kind of thing. Yeah. So and some animals just don't settle down and they're gonna tail whip and spray crap all over you no matter what you do, so although I always heard that white lips were the worst, and then I had there's this father-son duo that would come to the reptile shows, and they had like all these rare species back in like the early 90s or mid 90s, and he had a big old black white lip and just kind of around his neck, and it was just hanging out, no big deal, just completely tame. So, there's definitely exception. That's probably an exception to the rule, but he had a pair of them, the male and the female, and his dad would hold one and he'd hold the other, just easy going, no big deal. And hey, you want to hold a white lip? And sure, that kind of thing. Yep. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's ways to kind of help them settle down, or and so again, potentially handling or some kind of routine to get them used to the keeper and used to you.
I think a lot goes into temperament. I mean, age, environment.
Temperature.
I think scrubs is a great example of,
Yeah.
They're extremely, extremely cage defensive, and once they kind of clear that precipice and they unload their bowels on you and are done striking, they're, in my experience anyway, and I've run the gamut of some that just don't stop wanting to bite you, or will take the opportunity to bite you if they can, to just being the most placid animal once you get them out of the cage. I would say carpets are a good example of things that tend to be a little nervous when they're young, but tend to not be nervous when they're older. So I think there's definitely a lot to that. And, I think, sometimes it just seems like you get those carpets that never settle down. And is that because you didn't handle it enough, or is that because, you handle it, or it settles down? Is that because you handled it all the time? And, it's kind of a, kind of like a, I don't know, in the end, you really,
I have a coastal like that is just will light me up every single time, like no matter what. And I kind of try to handle it like once a week to somewhat form that, trust that, there's no harm going to come to it, but it is not letting up. So I'm kind of now leaning towards the leave it be, don't handle it when, unless absolutely needed to, and then just kind of hopefully let it mature into like a larger size. Cause I've heard that before from Travis, like, sometimes carpets can be a pain in the butt when they're small, but once they get to like a more suitable size, they'll kind of fall down and not be as.
Yeah. I mean, my coastals that are outside, they're very big animals. They're very old. They're old, they're pushing the 20-year, and they're old. And, I wouldn't consider them, what did I say? Not dangerous, but,
boisterous.
Thank you. Yes. I wouldn't consider them boisterous snakes. They're pretty passive, but man, sometimes you go to get them out or to do something, and they just were like, anytime you touch them with the hook, they're trying to bite. And it's like, oh, I do not, it's like you want to trust them because most of the time they're fine. But I don't want to get bit by either of those two animals because their teeth are huge.
There's no harm in using a snake hook,
Yeah,
I think that's just fine. And I think it's beneficial for the animal too, because if you do have an animal that's always trying to bite, a lot of times when they're biting you, they're losing a tooth or, like having some other issue, and it's just not the best for you or the animal. So, using a hook is not a big deal. I also think too, your presence around an animal, the way you handle yourself can also influence how the animal reacts to you. I remember I think I might have told this story on here before. I don't know if I have, but we were in Australia and my buddy brought over his big scrub python, and he
this is Smitty.
No, yeah, Smitty had the scrub, and what was it, the Kraken or something like that?
Yeah, it's a large male king Horneye. It's quite an animal.
Yeah, it was a beautiful snake. But Brian Barczyk was over there, and he was doing like the Steve Irwin jumping around, oh, it's dangerous, it's gonna bite, and that kind of thing. He was trying to get a picture with it, and it kept like moving towards him and stuff. He's like, oh, jumping around, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? I walked over and just picked it up and put it around my neck and said, take my picture or whatever, and then set it down. I'm like, that's how it's done. It just kind of, messing with him, but it didn't try to strike or bite me. And, I've seen several king Horneye in the wild, and the only time I think one tried to bite was, we were taking pictures of one on the road, and it was pretty big. It almost, went across the whole road. And Rico Walder was with me in that trip, and he was driving, and I was out because I was driving, I was tired, and so he took over, and like all of a sudden he just slams on the brakes, and we come to a screeching halt like a few inches from this giant scrub,
Yeah.
And so that woke me up, and we were out taking pictures of it and stuff. And he was trying to stop it from going a certain way, so he's using his boot, kind of putting it in front of the snake's face. And after a while, the snake's like had enough, and it kind of bit the bottom of his boot, kind of thing. But all the other ones I've seen, I'd pick them up and move them off the road, or pose them in a tree or whatever to get pictures, and they never struck. They never tried to bite. And I think if you're calm and deliberate, and and you're not afraid, I really think there's something to that, where they can sense that you're jittery and you're afraid, so they're gonna take advantage of that and either use their because a lot of snakes will try to bluff you out and try to strike and hiss and make you leave them alone, And if it works, if you back up when they hiss or they strike, then that enforces that works, Yeah. And so, I've had a few people kind of do that, say, hey, you just got to take a bite sometimes to show them that you're not afraid of them. And if they do bite you, just kind of hold still and let them let go, and then, continue on with what you were doing. Because if every time they bite you, you put them back in the cage, they're going to know, okay, if I don't want to be messed with, I'm just going to bite, and then they'll leave me alone, So
yeah, so all of my Tracier, I do the babies. I never used a snake hook for any of them. I just reach right in there and pick them up, and normally they're like, oh, what, oh, and by the time they figure out they're getting picked up, they're already up, and then they're like, oh, okay, yeah, no problem. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But it's like when you reach in there and then they turn their head and look, and you reach back, and then you try to reach in there again, that's when they're like, oh, this guy wants to get tagged.
You flinched, two for flinching.
and man, that's really been my experience with carpets, with scrubs, with a lot of stuff, is if you just reach right in there and grab it up. Yeah. I'm not going to say 100% of the time you won't get bit.
Yeah, but, you'll take a bite once in a while.
But a predominance of the time, I don't know. I don't know if I would do that. No, I probably would do that with any of the animals that I got from Carrie and Todd. Those animals are psychopaths, but if you just reach right in there and grab them, they don't even have time to get all wild on you.
Unless they're looking for a meal, I think that's one of the risks of, because honestly I don't handle my snakes all that often, and most of the interactions I have are during feeding time. So when I open the cage, I'm usually putting a rat or a mouse in, or water for them or whatever. So they're usually like, oh, doors open, time to eat, So that, a lot of people say, oh, you need to feed them outside their enclosure or whatever. But, they're just doing what their routine is, and they get used to that, then they're going to behave that way. So it's my fault, and I understand that. That's why I use a snake hook when I pull them out of the cage. Once they realize, okay, he's not feeding me, he's pulling me out of the enclosure, then they don't try to bite, they don't try to freak out, unless they're Woma or something, then they think everything's food. So but just know your animal, and know kind of the natural history. Like Womas they're always looking for a meal. Same with green tree pythons, and if you fed them every time they were hungry, you'd probably kill them by overfeeding them. You definitely would. And so you just got to keep that in mind and know that they're probably looking for something to eat. Even after you're handling, make sure when they start nosing you, realize they might think they can take you on, So if you understand the snake you're keeping, then you're going to have a much easier time, I think, in that regard with bites, or with, those responses that you can expect, Yeah.
No, my white lip was very much the same thing. It was a very quick, methodical, and if I messed anything up, it was just going to be downhill from there. But it was like a very quick. She hid under like this container that was like flipped upside down. Lisa showed me this trick. It was super cool. Mm-hmm. She just got like a plastic container, like a normal kind of bowl, and cut out the top of it. And instead of flipping it over like what you normally do, you just leave it like that, and you put a cork flat on top of it, and then you fill it with the moss for like a human hide. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is genius. That way, whenever like they're in there, you can just pull the whole thing out, you not disturb the snake, clean it, and put it back. Unfortunately, that never worked for me. You just hid under it. So, it was super convenient. So it was this very quick, I had to pull the water bowl out because she had this massive, like, 1 gallon water bowl, so that way she would never die of water. And I had to quickly scoop her out and then not move. that would give her like as soon as she was out of the cage and she would realize like she's on the hook, and then she would just kind of freeze and then slowly look around, and then she would be able to like kind of slowly open up at her, uncomfortable pace. But if I missed, she would take off and it would just be downhill. Just It would be like, they're fast. They are such fast animals. I don't think they get the credit for that. I also don't understand why they're so popular. They're terrible creatures, but they're beautiful.
Yeah.
That's the trick, I guess. And fish are beautiful, but I don't handle my fish. Some reptiles are just not meant for handling. Yeah.
I would see that, that iconic Pinterest snake for a solid 5 minutes a day, max. And that was at night, and I had to do it with a red flashlight, and my son's in this room and all of our snakes, so I had to I could only have 5 minutes of flashlight time, otherwise my son would wake up. And that was it. That was all I got for that animal.
Yeah.
So hopefully she pops up soon, so I can put her.
Justin, I'll see your fish and raise you a water buffalo.
Yeah. You don't want to handle a water buffalo?
Yeah. In San Diego?
Mooses, hippopotamuses,
Yeah. Oh yeah. I like that the red light trick. I remember hearing that from Rob. He told me to install a red light in my room, so when I went in there at night, just flick on the red light, and then you can kind of see what you're doing. Somehow my wiring got messed up, and so every time I tried to turn on that red light, it would trip, flip the fuse, and so I can't use that central light bank. But anyway, I just bought a headlamp that has red and green in addition to the white light. Awesome. And so I just put on a headlamp when I go in the reptile room at night. It's also great for collecting roaches, like the dubias, because when you open the dubia tub in the light, they all scatter. But with the red light, they kind of hang out, and you can get your sizes and a lot easier that way. So I've kind of
I bothered Rob about that trick too. Just don't ever record yourself doing that because I was using the red light to watch her because she was doing the digging thing. I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. I'm going to post this on Facebook because that's always a good thing to do. And oh my gosh, first comment after 5 minutes was, wow, super cool interaction. Just remove the red light. Make sure to take the red light out of the enclosure. And I was like, all right, that was my fault. Shouldn't have done that one. Can't post anything on Facebook.
Oh boy.
So I deleted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You invited the experts.
I know that was entirely my fault. As soon as I saw that comment, I was like, yeah, that was my fault. Shouldn't have done that one. I knew that.
And I guess who knows? I think as far as I know, it's a safe thing. And if you got a headlamp, you're not really. Whoa. It's not a constant thing. It's just here and there. So I didn't even say peak call.
Over here.
But I think using the red light lets you witness behaviors like that. And I think Rob was talking about that on the last podcast where people think of certain snakes as calm and easygoing. He's like, try handling them at night, with the red light on. They're gonna light you up. So you gotta.
He was talking about the Pandoya. He was like, everyone thinks they're super placid, but take them out at night.
Yep.
I mean, I would say green trees are a great example. Yeah. They're very chill snakes during the day. Just opening the cage at night, you're liable to get your face taken off.
Yeah. Yep. And again, that goes back to understanding the animal's natural history. If you know what you're dealing with, you can respond appropriately. And I do think there's ways to interact or to kind of handle in certain ways, pretty much everything that we work with. But some are probably less. It's better probably not to interact with those things. But I don't know. I wish I could interact with the Komodo dragon. Those things,
that'd be really cool.
Yeah, watching the interactions that zookeepers have with the Komodos and stuff. I did get a pet one once in a zoo, which was pretty sweet. But yeah, that they say that those animals are very intelligent. They're very responsive. I've read some stories about different keepers and their interactions with Komodo dragons, and I think there just are some animals that that lends itself to. my cousin told me a story. They went down to Costa Rica and they took this little boat tour. This guy took them up the river, by the Tarcoles Bridge, and there's like this huge population of crocodiles, and we got to check that out when we were there in October. But, I guess this guy takes people up the river on tours, but so he takes my cousin and his family up the river, and all of a sudden he jumps out of the boat, and there's this massive crocodile, and he's in there just playing with it and swimming around with it. And he's like, I know there's no other crocodiles because this is the biggest one in the river and stuff. And I'm just like, man, the amount of trust you have in that animal. And, you hear stories like, the grizzly.
Nope, I was wrong.
Exactly. Yeah. It just takes once to be wrong, or that animal to be really hungry, and desperate or something, when you become meal rather than friend. Yeah, that can be sketchy. We need to keep that in mind. These are still wild animals. They're not necessarily domesticated, even though they've been bred in captivity, potentially, several generations. We still need to understand, especially with large ones that are potentially harmful or
boisterous,
or venomous. What do you want me to call a venomous species?
Spicy. I like that.
Yeah, if they're a little spicy.
The worst you'll get is diarrhea in the morning. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. And listening to
that one.
Listening to Tom Crutchfield talk about handling, free handling cobras, I'm like, is that the best thing to be putting out there? I don't know, but anyway, I think when I was
come out before they can react, man. It's super simple.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, and I remember as a kid, I was reading about Grace Wiley. She was had a bunch of venomous snakes back in like the 30s or 40s. It's a while ago, and she had like king cobras and stuff. And she tells a story like she's holding her king cobra, and a crocodile comes over and bites the cobra on the tail, and the cobra's like tapping her to alert her to the crocodile biting its tail or something, So like she had some pretty crazy stories, and she just free handled all these venomous reptiles all the time, just handled them like a normal snake. But she also died of a cobra bite, So she was holding one for a picture, for a photograph. She took off her glasses. She couldn't see well, and the cobra bit her, and she died. And then they had antivenom, but she'd never used it, so the syringe was all rusty, and the was.
Coincidentally, that was the same cobra that the crocodile bit, and it was just trying to get revenge because obviously she did not have the cobra's
back. Protect him from the
That's
crocodile.
Correct. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
From the boisterous crocodile. But I think when we let our guard down or we become complacent, of course that can be when things. And people are skilled and they can handle one of the best venomous handlers out there is Terry Phillip, and he's had how many thousands of handling hours with venomous snakes, and he got bit by a prairie rattlesnake out in the hills or something, and so it just takes one bite to mess you up, and he spent some fun time in the hospital, and that's the only bite he's had, so it's like the more you interact with those animals, your chances just go up. It's almost not a matter of if, but when, So.
I think it's if you think that your skill, is such that through the statistical odds of numbers and, you have these high numbers, you're increasing the likelihood. And if you don't think so, that's your ego talking. That's purely your ego talking. And like that, Terry doesn't take unnecessary risks.
No.
Terry is probably one of and that's why I really like Terry is that he is one of the, safest, most reasonable venomous snake handlers. And oh, by the way, he has thousands of interactions, a month or a week or I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah. They have a ton of venomous snakes.
A ton. Yeah. So
And like with the story with the puff adder in Malaysia, now they're looking at trying to ban, keeping any non-native venomous snakes or something. Anytime you have a bite like that, then you risk ruining it for the rest of us, kind of thing.
Well, I mean, it's and this goes back to the NPR podcast where they were talking about legislation and all that kind of stuff. I mean, to the average person, to the average lawmaker, the question just is like, wait, why are we allowing this? Mm-hmm. And it's a good question in some cases. Like, why do they allow that? Like, there are no rules around this, or we have incredibly lax rules, or, well, this doesn't sound very good. I mean, to us, it doesn't sound like a big deal because we're educated in it. To people who may not understand, it seems unreasonable. And if the rest of the world looks at us and thinks we're unreasonable, guess what? Perception is reality. So,
I think that's definitely a point for Noah that, in certain circumstances, you probably shouldn't interact with certain reptiles because it could.
At my work, we made a joke about how the biggest YouTube or snake YouTube channels are the ones that are, free handling the venomous.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're for the most part, they're the biggest channels.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and what was it? I think it was that same Iper episode where they're talking about a guy free handling a green mamba. And all these comments were people that didn't even realize it was venomous. Like, oh, what a beautiful green snake. They may not even and all the reptile keepers are like, you idiot, what are you doing? And nobody really realized what that was or that it was potentially dangerous. It's only when something bad happens. And I mean, I guess if you're going to keep venomous, you better know how to handle them properly, and so I guess I could probably take that point back and say, if you do keep venomous, you should learn how to handle venomous, because that's going to be a bad thing if you do not know how to handle venomous and your snake gets out and you need to, do something to handle it. I know Phil Wolf is, those cages that say, you'll never have to interact with your venomous snake. You can, there's little doors for the box. Yeah, those kind of things. And he says, I will never use those because if you can't maintain a venomous reptile, without that, then you shouldn't be keeping a venomous reptile. That's kind of the bottom line. So I see a very valid point to that. So
I think there's a slight difference between knowing how to handle your venomous, but still not doing it routinely.
Oh, sure. I mean, well, I guess, you still have to feed them and you still have to, clean their cage and things like that. So you need to know how to safely move that animal from the cage to, the can or whatever, where you're putting it while you clean the cage and things like that. You need to know, I'm not going to scoop out the substrate with my hand because there could be a shed fang in there that could inject something, just things like that where you wouldn't think about that. There's all sorts of different permutations to keeping venomous, and I think that's why having the permit systems or the training systems where you have to get a certain number of hours with somebody that knows what they're doing. And we talked about this with Phil Wolf. Those kind of things can be beneficial. But assuming you get the right kind of keeper, I guess, the guy who's like a Terry Phillips, that's doing it right, that knows what they're doing, is not taking unnecessary risks to, have that machismo or whatever, or to be boisterous themselves. You gotta keep that in mind. There's a fine line between being a confident keeper and a cocky keeper, or, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think
all right. Well, go ahead. Go ahead, Noah.
No, I was going to say, I just think that some of the more reputable venomous keepers are definitely more of on the more nipper side of things.
That's
well said. Well said.
I like the callback. I like the callback.
So I feel like we've kind of covered. Do you guys have any more points to put out, or you kind of want to surmise?
The transfer, the Rob Stone method of using the dividers between the cages is kind of my last little hurrah for just not handling, just using the PVC or the linked cages
Like
Especially
the
like
the Bobby Pebble
seasons.
pass-throughs? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, the Bobby Pebble pass-throughs. I didn't realize that was the patented name.
Yes. Yes.
We
All
need
right,
to
just-
put the label
it is
on
now. It is now.
I will
Trademark. Trademark.
If we could please forever refer to them as the Bobby Pebble pass-throughs. Or
think we
just
need
the
to-
Bobby Pebble pass. I'm good with that as well.
We might have trouble trademarking that because that's a Justin Smith creation. Bobby Pebbles, I'm pretty sure he came up with.
Yeah,
that one.
but
But the pass through, putting those together, you've created something new here. So I think you might have a case for your trademark. But.
We can. We're not going to give him his due. We're going to steal it. Sorry,
You're gonna get some Schmitty tears. There's some Schmitty tears coming down the line.
Aren't we used to it by now?
Well, definitely a good topic to consider. Handling versus kind of keeping a distance, letting them behave, the way they might in the wild, and seeing things you might not if you're handling them all the time. I think it's thanks for bringing this topic to Reptile Fight Club and coming on. And I don't think it's disastrous at all. You did a great job. So
I definitely did better than I thought I was going to do, and I was definitely shaking for a solid 40 minutes during this. So.
It's a great, great
nothing
discussion.
to worry about. Nothing to worry about.
Yep. So anybody considering bringing on a topic, it's fun, right? We're not too antagonistic.
You guys again.
Yeah. So thanks for coming on. So I guess we're kind of doing a new thing where we talk about maybe stuff that's we've seen that's great in the hobby or in herpetoculture or herpetology or whatever. I'll lead off with something I saw. I think it was Noah Fields at NFK Herping on YouTube, and he was talking about this project where they're trying to find this Indicus type monitor on an island. I think it's Halmahera where they're looking for this monitor. And I guess it's known from, I think, one or two specimens or photos of specimens. And, they've only seen a couple individuals, but it's a different species. And so they're going to go explore the island and use eDNA, which is kind of an interesting way to find stuff in the wild. So eDNA stands for environmental DNA. So they basically like sample waterways or soil, and they can pick up traces of this monitor lizard or something like that if it's been through the area and its DNA is in the
I'd really like to see the. I guess I'm interested
I guess
how that
famously
works.
it's been used kind of more recently for detecting COVID or this SARS-2 virus.
And they monitor. They monitor sewage, right?
Yeah,
basically
wastewater, and they can tell if somebody in that
they do it
wastewater district has
like
COVID,
population projections of COVID outbreak based on sewage sampling.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's similar to that, where they go out in the environment and sample.
So they're taking a known DNA sample. I mean, obviously, like they have to be able to get a signal, right? Like they have to know what signal they're looking for. So they they get the signal and then they go out and they sample.
And they may be using, I'm not sure on the specifics. They may be using a similar species, using primers for a region that's common to all Indicus type monitors to say, okay, we detected an Indicus type monitor in the right place. That kind of thing, maybe there's still more out there, and that kind of
interesting,
encourages your searches or something. So kind of a new thing, I guess, a neat, interesting thing. I guess it's not as exciting as maybe finding the animal, and hopefully they're able to find the monitor itself, and maybe get some information on, populations in that area. But I mean, it's a less traveled area. There's, it's pretty dense forest and stuff from what I gather, where these things are from. But I thought that was kind of cool, and I think they're taking donations to to fund the project. And so,
nice.
If you want to contribute to that. And
is this a privately funded thing? This is,
I believe so. I'm not sure. There might be more to it, and I should have wrote down more information so you can go find this. But I'm pretty sure it was NKF Herping, on YouTube that announced this. If I'm wrong, we can talk about it next week, I guess.
Yes, I will lambast you.
There you go. You can.
I will boisterously lambast you.
Yeah, I'm sure you'll take that opportunity with relish. So, I don't know. Anything else you guys have seen recently that deserves some shout outs or kudos or interest?
Checking out Herp HQ, his project for the his daylight cycle with the LED, because he's trying to do a full autonomous with humidity, temperature, and light, full day, like a day, almost like a true replicated day swing with heated, with your peak lights turning on with the hottest during noon or whatever it is, even with winter cycles. It's a really cool project, and I hope to create something similar eventually.
That's cool. Yeah, that's really cool. I guess kind of related to that, I've been thinking a lot about humidity. Maybe it's talking to Ron St. Pierre recently, but where these desert species that we think of as needing a dry environment or whatever, but they have these microhabitats where they have a certain nipper where they're getting very high humidity. Like say a snake in a burrow or these lizards coming out at night after the dew point hits, that they're not just out doing their thing, but they're out when there's that stimulus in the environment. I think that was the big thing that Ron kind of keyed me into, was when he was out hunting night anoles or giant anoles or whatever in Florida, or chameleons or whatever. They weren't really coming out, and they weren't finding anything, and all of a sudden the dew point hit, and then all of a sudden they're finding all these lizards. So we've got a data set, and I won't spill too many beans, but we've got a data set that kind of suggests that certain desert snake may spend most of their time at very high humidity, and that was something novel to me. So I think I'm going to revamp my keeping and try to develop maybe a more humid hide for this species. So that's information that's forthcoming. I apologize for the mystery behind it, but
there is now half a can of beans on the floor, folks.
There you go. Oh. But I did see it was somebody keeping Kleinmanni, the Egyptian tortoise, right? The small tortoise. And they had this humid hide, and basically it was like an upside down Rubbermaid container with a hole in the side so they could go inside. And then it had a nebulizer attached to the top, and it was fogging the inside of this hide. And so they could go out and go around and get the light and the heat and everything, but then they could go back into this humid hide area and have, just like they maybe would in a burrow. And some of these burrow systems have, 80, 90, 100% humidity in them. So even though they're out in the middle of the desert, they're very humid in these burrows. So kind of a cool thought that's come through my brain here. So I guess I'm just continuing to rethink, how we keep desert species. But
nice. Well,
good podcasts you've been listening to?
Me?
I'm a little behind in my listening, but I'm pretty sure there's a few.
Yeah, I mean, I caught the NPR where they kind of talked about had Mike and Mike Curtin and oh my gosh, I feel so bad right now.
Say it.
I can't. The more you say, the more. It was Mike Curtin, and my 46-year-old brain is pulling a Julender right now.
Hey, I gotta relish this one. I gotta
my
be a little boy
gosh. What's that?
Do you want me to say the name?
Yes, please.
No, don't do it.
Oh God. Rhymes with hot.
Scott, thank you. Jesus. Sorry.
Scott Borden? Is that the one?
Yes.
Okay.
My God. Is that what it feels like, Justin?
It does.
Oh, and man, I'm sorry, dude. I have given you.
Now you know the other
crap.
side, right? Now you know the
I
other
felt
side.
like, you know what I felt like? I felt like an old man who didn't know where he was, but he was walking down the street with underwear. That's what I felt.
It's fun, huh? It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mike and Scott had a great discussion about the current state of the hobby and things like that, and they brought up some really good points.
I think.
Maybe we ought to have those guys on to fight, because it seemed like they were kind of encroaching into Reptile Fight Club area with that whole discussion.
It was really cool listening to that episode.
And I think I mean, you know, not to bag on the Podfather and the Mac and Wookie, but had that been done right on Reptile Fight Club, I think we could have teased out a little bit more of I think there's room for some maybe more how do I want to say spicy
additional discussion.
Spicy discussion that comes out of that. I think
they did issue that challenge at the end of the podcast.
And
they said we want to come on all the podcasts, so we better have those guys.
I think that we need to be very honest about this and not shy away from some uncomfortable conversation. And if people get their feelings hurt about, well, I don't like that snake people are saying this about the hobby, like, well, maybe you need to examine why you feel that way, and maybe you need to stare yourself in the mirror and stop, kind of self-aggrandizing the hobby. I think that's definitely a show we should have and see if we can continue that conversation. I enjoyed listening to those guys. I am so sorry, Scott. My apologies for my senility Julinder moment.
Hey now.
Gosh,
hey now.
I know. I said I wouldn't do it, and I just did it again. So
there's just there's just so much room in in our brains. We can only retain so much.
And I guess what makes me mad is you actually have shit in your brain, and I have shit for brains. So it's
Wait, that didn't sound good either way.
Well, you know stuff. You're a doctor, and you're
okay. That sounds a little better.
You're working with tropical viruses, and
yeah. All right. Well, that's been a fun show. Thanks for listening and tuning in, and hope to catch you next week again. Let's shout out to the NPR network, npr.com. Check out all their stuff, all their great interviews, and man, they're really making a push for some impressive episodes this new year. So check them out. Thanks again to the Podfather and the Mac and Wookie. Yeah, where can we find you, Noah?
You can find me on Facebook at Richardson. Just look for the goof with messy hair and a boa constrictor on his neck. That's my account. And we do have a reptile account. My dad and I, we have some of our snakes. We need to update it because one went missing and unfortunately one of them passed away. But it's at Pappy and the Dipsticks.
Nice.
All right.
Nice.
That's a good one. Yeah.
A lot of bands. A lot of musicians in our family, so we all said if we were ever to form a band, it would be Pappy and the Dipsticks.
That's awesome.
Hey,
that is a killer band name. Actually.
The Reptile Crew, I think that constitutes it's also good for a good reptile crew. So
yeah.
Good band name.
Cool.
All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for having me on and listening to me babble on.
Yeah,
of course, we'll have you again.
Yep. It's been a lot of fun. That's one of my favorite parts of doing this is meeting new people and, kind of getting some FaceTime and having a discussion because, that's what this is about, connecting with fellow enthusiasts and people who share that same passion and excitement. So, yeah, thanks for doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hope to hear more of other people that aren't as well known, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is that we found too with this is like people think their maybe their ideas or their thoughts don't matter as much because they haven't, been around as long or they haven't worked with as many species or whatever excuse, but I think I've gained a lot of insights from just those people, it seems like, you know, the guys that have been around a long time, you've heard from them a lot, you know, kind of how they think and what they're going to say and how they're going to act. So, you know, I think we limit ourselves in our own learning when we assume that we don't have anything to learn from some of the newer, you know, new people. But I do think a lot of, you know, new guys look for different ways to keep, or, you know, have different thoughts on issues and different mindsets. So yeah, it's been really good. All right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next week for another episode of Reptile Fight Club.
If you touch your snake or you don't touch your snake, remember, Reptile Fight Club is here for you.